What happens when a Baptist and a Lutheran walk into a bar and then they come out Catholic? How in the world does that happen? I have Brayden, the catechumen, with me. How are you, Brayden?
Doing wonderful. I was considering the answer to that question before we started, and it dawned on me. Baptists don't go to bars with Lutherans. Baptists don't go to bars at all, right? I mean, like most of us.
Oh man.
When you go to a bar and you're a Baptist, you just go secretly. So you're definitely not going with a Lutheran. I don't know, but I'm doing well. How are
Yeah.
you
Oh,
doing?
I'm doing well too. Thanks, Brayden. The Lutherans, man, we love
Oh
our
yes.
liquor. We love our beer. We love everything alcohol related. Just like Catholics, we're kind of like the lower C Catholic drinking group, if you
Yes.
will.
True.
Yeah.
True.
So, Brayden, I'm very intrigued. You are a recent convert to Catholicism, correct?
Yes, fairly recent. My wife and I were confirmed Easter 2023. There was some discernment beforehand, but yes, fairly recent. It's coming up on 2 years this Easter, actually. So
Yeah, congratulations. Now, were
thank you.
you brought up in the Baptist tradition?
Yeah, for the most part. So my family, whenever I was in elementary school slash high school, we didn't go as a family, but I started going again in my teenage years to a non-denominational Baptist kind of realm when I started taking my faith more seriously. So I was just going to church alone in that tradition, and uh, and then as I kind of transitioned to college, I became like super Southern Baptist, like the most stereotypical Southern Baptist that you could think of. I've always been anti-Catholic. But
You
yes,
still are?
yeah, I am. I am right now. I'm anti-Catholic. Catholic. I should
Oh,
just rename my channel to that. Oh
oh
man,
man,
my
dude,
channel
it
is
would
working.
you'd be at 100,000 subscribers by like next week if that
Yeah,
were.
the anti-Catholic Catholic. That's pretty catchy, guys.
It is, yeah. You could put a twist and a qualifier on that. But so I'm curious, when did your journey, what was the first thing that served as a catalyst for you to look into Catholicism or your journey to Catholicism? What was that first stepping stone?
So yeah, it's a few things, but just like more generally, it's the church fathers, and it's very stereotypical. Most people, especially from my tradition, who convert to Catholicism, it's because they're exposed to the early church. And what you're told as a Baptist is, all these, Catholic traditions and like they're just man made traditions added hundreds of years after Christ. And you need to go back to how the early Christians did it. And that's, fill in the blank, the thing that wasn't attested to in church history for over 1,000 years. Single elder led, congregational church polity, baptism, immersion only baptism, believers only baptism, that sort of stuff. And so that was kind of like the rhetoric. And so you kind of have this fixation, I suppose, about getting rid of like the Catholic nonsense that is supposedly infecting, Protestantism in the church. And, some Baptists even go so far as to say, well, we shouldn't even have dedicated buildings for churches because the early church, when they were in persecution,
Yeah.
they were meeting in houses. So you'd have house churches, and that's where the house church movement came up. So it's like, you're just peeling back all these layers, right? Until you get like to the mere Christianity possible in your mind, but it's just basically Baptist theology. So yeah, that's kind of the gist.
Okay. Did you have exposure to the church fathers growing up in high school and college, or was this like on your own accord, or how did that work?
So it was in college, um, partly due, ironically, to Leighton Flowers. So he's the host of Soteriology
Yep. Yep.
101. And he was trying to make a patristic case against what he terms Augustinian Calvinism, which like is such a. Anyways, I won't even get on that rant because Saint Augustine believed you can lose your salvation. So, anyways, you can lose your justification. Anyways, sorry, just like I could rant all day long about that. So he was using, I think his name is Ken Wilson or something like that. I can't remember his name. Anyways, he had some other Baptist on who did his like doctoral dissertation about Augustinian Calvinism and about how all the fathers before Augustine rejected his perspective of predestination and soteriology, and they believed in the freedom of the will as as put in opposition to like a dichotomy between the early fathers and the supposed Calvinism of Augustine. And they're like, oh, look, why Augustine introduced this novelty into the church, and now everyone believes in predestination and they're Calvinists or whatever. And I'm like, oh wow, like I didn't even know that these people existed, and you can go and read their writings and see what they said for themselves, right? And so that's part of the reason why I got interested in the fathers. Another reason is because one of the smartest professors I had at Oral Roberts University, it's a university in Tulsa, which is a charismatic university, but I didn't know how charismatic when I went there. Kind of prosperity gospel, word of faith sort of theology. One of my professors, he was my apologetics professor, and he was a Roman Catholic. I'm like, huh. How can you be this smart and be a Catholic? Because you're reading the Bible in class, and we all know Catholics don't read the Bible, and Catholics deny penal substitutionary atonement. That's not, and they think they can earn their salvation. So how can someone so smart, obviously, be a Catholic? And he took us through the defense of Christianity point by point, going through the Nicene Creed, which I, as a Baptist Christian, had never even heard of. So that was the other catalyst. And I was just like, the Nicene Creed? What the heck is this thing? I've never heard of, this Nicene Creed thing, maybe once before, but I hadn't recalled it. And, going into these early writings and defending it point by point in systematically, it drew my interest into knowing what the earliest church fathers believed, because it's like they serve as an indication for the interpretation of scripture that was passed down by the apostles. Just like common sense, even apart from, the Holy Spirit guiding the church into truth, even apart from that sort of argument, just like on a practical level, like the church father, we rely upon them for so much,
Mhm.
So anyways, that's what got me interested in the church fathers, a combination of those things. I start reading St. Athanasius and I realize, hey, this dude does not sound very Baptist to me. In fact, he sounds pretty Catholic. I don't know. Maybe he could be Lutheran. Maybe he could be Anglican. But he's definitely not Baptist, right? And so yeah, that's kind of I went from all of that. First writing I read was St. Athanasius on the Incarnation, and then I got like a 3-volume set, just like compiling some of the most prolific and oft-cited quotations from the Church Fathers. And yeah, the deal was made by then. That's kind of what got me interested into looking into Catholicism. So yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned Saint Augustine, and would you say that most Protestants, I would say mainstream or high church or whatever you want to call it, they love Saint Augustine, not all of his works or all of Saint Augustine, but kind of like a reduced, limited, like half of Saint Augustine, that Protestant side or half of Saint Augustine. Why,
Yes.
why do you think that is? Because Saint Augustine was a Catholic bishop. So why do Protestants latch on to Saint Augustine more than any other church father, East or West?
So I think this has to do with the history of reception of St. Augustine. So St. Augustine, if you look at what is it called? The Sentences, which is a compilation of all the different like church fathers, he makes up the vast majority of the corpus of the church fathers that was available in that time period. I mean, his works were so widespread and so immediately, I guess it made such a big impact immediately as he started, kind of proliferating all these writings. And so from that period on, from the 5th century onward, Augustine was so big of an influence on at least Western Christianity that going into the Middle Ages, especially the High Middle Ages, it's just like St. Augustine was the guy before Protestantism even, arose.
Right.
Then you go to the writings of Martin Luther, who was an Augustinian monk, and to the writings of John Calvin, who, I think 70% of the quotations of the church fathers that he quotes is St. Augustine, if I remember that correctly. So it has root in the Protestant Reformation itself. And I think it's just because he's such a prolific and, quite frankly, wonderful writer, theological writer. Another part of it is, the reason why modern Protestants might latch onto it is because they're only really familiar with the few verses or few passages of Augustine, and not even like just kind of vaguely familiar. Like, I know a lot of Reformed Baptists will like, you know, just all over Saint Augustine, right? And it's like, oh, he was a Calvinist basically, and they'll have no idea that he taught the sinlessness of Mary, which I came across an article the other day. I'm going to do a video about it, where James White disputed whether Saint Augustine taught the sinlessness of Mary, and it's like absolute. Anyways, it was just like kind of a ridiculous. It was very ridiculous how he kind of argued that point. He explicitly affirmed the sinlessness of Mary. He affirmed the authority of the Roman pontiff. He affirmed a 73-book canon. He affirmed the existence of purgatory. He affirmed he is the most exhaustive source when it comes to our understanding of the early fathers' theology of justification. Sorry, that was a mouthful. St. Augustine is the most explicit when it comes to justification. And he affirms that justification is a transformative action of God whereby he makes us righteous. He doesn't just repute us to be righteous based off of the alien external righteousness of Christ, which I'm sure you know a lot about as a former Lutheran. And it's just so ironic because they'll say, oh, well, the Reformation, it was the triumph of Augustine's theology of grace over his ecclesiology. And it's like, no, you didn't even get that right. Anyway, so I think those are the primary reasons. And it's so ironic how Catholic St. Augustine is.
Right. What I was kind of thinking of is Protestants love to latch on to St. Paul, especially Romans and Galatians.
For sure.
For me personally, St. Augustine is like another St. Paul, because I believe, who wrote as much on justification and grace, soteriology, as St. Augustine? So it's like, especially when it comes to initial justification, initial conversion. And so Protestants love St. Paul, but they love him in the sense that they think what he means is their interpretation. And likewise with St. Augustine, particularly on justification, on grace.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like the same thing they do with St. Paul, they do with St. Augustine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And to kind of add some meat to the bones, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but this is actually admitted in my Baptist college. So like one of my professors, I forget what it was for. I think it was for Christian ethics or something like that. Or it was something like that. Or maybe a different class. It was at OBU, and it was a Baptist theology professor. And he admitted, us Protestants, we focus on Paul, whereas, the Catholics, they primarily focus on the Gospels and the teachings of Christ. And that's just kind of like the emphasis. It's not that we ignore either one. It's just kind of like the thing that we primarily focus on. If you go to a Baptist service, they're mainly going to be focusing on the theology of Paul as written in Romans. Now, there was a Baptist church that I visited in Tulsa, and their sermon series, they're like an exegetical kind of like, not topical, exegetical preaching. They had been preaching through Romans for the past 2 years every single Sunday, and they weren't even through half of Romans. It's just, that's just kind of like their thing.
Their liturgical years just Romans.
Yeah,
that's it, just Romans.
Exactly. Yeah, A, B, and C. We're gonna go through Romans 1 through 5. Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah. So, well, let's go back to your spiritual journey onto your conversion. So you started reading the Church Fathers, St. Athanasius, St. Augustine. What was the next step, or what was going on, or what was holding you back? And then I don't want to forget, your wife is in this. Were you married at the time or dating, and how did that work out?
Yeah. So that's such an interesting story. So I've known my wife since we were in middle school. We went to the same middle school, high school, and college together. We started dating like senior year of high school, or maybe it was junior year. I can't remember if it was junior, like the end of junior year or the beginning of senior year or something. Anyways, We started dating. We got married in 2021.
Mhm.
So between my junior and or my sophomore and junior year of college, and it was before that that I had started making like having these epiphanies about the church father. It came rather quickly because all for the longest time, I think ever since high school, I haven't really been interested in learning about or consuming much other content other than theology. And so the only thing that I'm consuming from probably like 2020 until now is just like debates, theology podcasts. I love the Bible Project. I love that sort of stuff. And just like geeking out in biblical exegesis and background stuff. And so the turnaround rate was fairly quickly. Like I'm consuming so much information. I start whenever I get introduced to the church fathers. That kind of led me to finding, oh, there's Pints with Aquinas, and oh, there's Steve Ray, and oh, there's all
Mhm.
these people at Catholic Answers, and like so I start getting and consuming all of these debates and podcasts and videos with everyone. And then my wife and I get married, and before this, I had actually, we had actually decided together, like, hey, we're going to get married, but we're also going to transfer colleges to Oklahoma Baptist University so that I can get a thoroughly Baptist education and get hired at a Baptist church fairly quickly after I finish. I was probably going to try and get hired at the Baptist church I was interning at the time as their student pastor, full time after I was done with college.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah, it was. We got married, we went to OBU, and then like after a few months, I was just kind of like, oof, I should probably like let her know like I am very serious about considering Catholicism, because I was already over halfway there intellectually at least, and I kind of had the hunch, the intuition that Catholicism was true, but it was I knew it was going to be such a hard shift from, oh, I'm so anti-Catholic, I'd never be Catholic. When I told my Lutheran friends, they were like, are you being serious? Like, yeah, we never thought that you would become Catholic. And so I broke it to my wife, and she's like, oh, dude, I married a Baptist. Like, what can we be Anglican or something? It's always like, can we be Anglican? Because Anglicans, as long as you're not
Right.
Catholic and as long as you're not Baptist, it's kind of just like you can believe whatever, kind of. And so it's kind of like, oh yeah, Anglicans kind of look Catholic, so I guess maybe we can be Anglican. We don't have to submit to the Pope or anything then. Um, but yeah, after more months, I keep sharing with her, the things that I'm reading, that I'm listening to, answering objections and things like that. We kind of decide to go to mass. It was actually my wife's idea to just go to mass because neither her nor I had ever stepped foot in a Catholic church our entire lives. And none of our family is Catholic, so we're the only Catholics in our entire family, even now. And so, yeah, we decided to go to mass, and afterwards, we realized, oh wait a second, they read the Bible in mass, and they read the Bible more than they did at our Baptist church, and the liturgy's filled with scripture, and these aren't just pointless rituals. They actually have they have meaning, but they also draw our mind up to God and help us to worship Him in spirit and truth, And so it was such a beautiful thing experiencing the liturgy, coming from a tradition where the liturgy is, all right, we're going to sing a few songs from the hymnal, listen to a 50-minute sermon, sing another song, and then leave. And you can have coffee during it or something.
Oh,
So, so, yes, it was a big shift. And, so I feel like I'm rambling, but that
no, no,
was
it's all good.
basically the journey there, kind of a bridge journey.
So your wife didn't give, okay, two questions. Your wife didn't
Yeah.
give you much pushback, and then how did your family, like your immediate family, take it?
So no, she gave me a lot of pushback when I brought it up to her. She's like, "What?" It was a source of a little bit of strife during our first year of being married. And it wasn't the entire year, but within the year, it was kind of just like, oh man, it's very shaky right now. We had, I wouldn't say arguments, but it was just kind of like our discussions were very deep and very we were very attached You know, I was still kind of attached to my upbringing. She was very attached to Protestantism. But then it's like this yearning and draw towards the Catholic Church intellectually and spiritually. And so it was very difficult. But then once you realize most of your objections to Catholicism, at least as a Baptist, are not even objections to Catholicism. It's just like objections to something that is made up to you.
Yeah.
I had actually forgotten to mention. So we went to a Christian high school, and we were taught in our Bible curriculum anti-Catholic lies. Catholics aren't Christians. Catholics are no better than Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. Like there was a whole semester there where we were going over the cults, and Catholics worship Mary, Catholics pray to dead people, Catholics think they can earn their salvation, all these things. And are a part of our curriculum. Okay, go and look at these Steve Ray, goodness gracious, Ray Comfort evangelism videos. And I was like, oh man, there's this one Catholic who's like a witch. I guess the Catholic Church allows that. It's just it was just insane. So that's our upbringing, is just extremely anti-Catholic for the most bizarre reasons. So that's kind of where the emotional side of things, it just kind of like, you really need a paradigm shift in order for you to understand, oh, I've been lied to my entire life about the Catholic faith.
Yeah.
And, what does that say about the Catholic faith if, in order to disprove it, they have to lie about it,
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for a lot of things. But
Yeah.
sorry, I forget your other question.
Oh no, your immediate family, but that's okay.
Oh yes. Yeah. So it took a while for us to actually break it to them, because they kind of had the same sort of perspective as us about Catholics, but it was even more entrenched. So Jasmine's family, more Reformed, Calvinistic Baptist. We weren't Calvinists, but we were Baptist. And so it was kind of like very difficult for that conversation to be had. Didn't take it very well. My side of the family just kind of like very confused, but not angry per se, not scared for our salvation, but it was just kind of like, oh, this is like, I never thought that this would happen, and so yeah, it was kind of like that for the most part. Our the Lutheran friends, you probably know what Martin Luther said about the Baptists or the Anabaptists. I would rather drink blood with the Pope than commune with the Anabaptists, or whatever that quotation.
There was someone who Martin Luther hated the most. It was Zwingli.
Yeah.
And then the Anabaptists, who are now, I believe, Quakers. Quakers come from Anabaptists, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, our families didn't take it very well, but they took it better than I thought in certain ways. And even a part of my family is becoming more open to the Catholic faith as time goes on, answer more objections, and really just not even objections, just kind of like misconceptions, you know? And so that's kind of how it is. And then like other members of our family just aren't open to it at all. It's kind of just like laughable, like that they would be open to it. But hey, it was laughable that I would be open to it. I remember debating my Catholic friend over in high school in our senior Bible class. We debated whether baptism was necessary for salvation. And I was just like poking fun at him the entire time because I just thought it was just ridiculous. And everyone agreed with me. And so everyone was egging me on. He was the only Catholic in the class. And it's just so, looking back, I'm like, wow, I just cannot believe how arrogantly anti-Catholic and yet ignorantly anti-Catholic I was. It's just like those two things are almost always go hand in hand. If you are so arrogantly and conceitedly opposed to the Catholic faith that you like can't even take it seriously, chances are you literally have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to the Catholic faith. So
Yeah. I mean, I share the same similar background as being indoctrinated, kind of against my will. You know what I mean? This is just what my life, the formation of my upbringing was exactly all the caricatures of the Catholic Church that you just mentioned. I do want to ask you though, if you had to pick one thing or more, was there a stumbling block or an obstacle right before you converted, like maybe an RCIA or OCIA now, that was just like you needed to really like pray and discern and maybe read to like really get over this hurdle? Was there anything like that?
So there were a few that I can think of. I remember when this is so funny. You're gonna love this. When I was like in the process, I was looking for Catholic YouTube channels. My Lutheran friend was like, "Hey, there's this really good Catholic channel called Vatican Catholic. Have you have you ever heard of him?" I'm like, "No, I haven't." So it was getting into that sort of dark side of Catholicism that is schismatic central, sorry to be blunt, that almost scandalized me out of discerning, because those, and I won't name drop any other people, so I won't become a stumbling block for people, but I will say there are particular figures, public figures, very popular, who in their representation of the state of the church today offer the biggest stumbling block to conversion than any Catholic doctrine. Because when you come into the Catholic faith, what is the necessary condition for you being in communion with the Catholic Church? It's being in communion with the Pope.
The Pope.
Okay.
Yep.
And if the Pope is a Freemason, Satan worshiping, heretic who's, causing everyone to believe heresy, why the heck am I going to want to be in communion with him? So you're saying the Catholic Church is the one true church and no one can be saved unless you're Catholic, but also if you're Catholic, you have to be in communion with this heretic, And so I was like, how are you supposed to navigate that, So that was one of the biggest stumbling blocks that I encountered in coming to the Catholic faith.
After you're like once you arrived and converted and you're in, right?
No, while I'm discerning, before
okay.
I'm even in RCIA.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to doctrine, I think one of the hardest things to understand, and this it is very difficult to understand because of the way that it's often presented in very simplistic terms, is the distinction between initial and subsequent justification and the growth in merit. Merit is like a bad word. You're probably familiar with the a notion that even post-conversion, post-baptism, even if you're in right relationship with Christ, all of your good works are dirty rags. I think Martin Luther once said that all of your good works are at least venially sinful.
Yep.
Yep. And it's that idea that is just permeates almost all of Protestantism. And there's a passage in Revelation that describes the white, pure, clean, bright robes of the saints that we have before God as we're entering the New Jerusalem. And in Protestant brain, it's like, oh yeah,
faith. No, it's not faith.
Faith grasps onto the righteousness of Christ that clothes our sinful nature. And even though we're, simultaneously sinner, simultaneously just, the justice is Christ, and Christ is that cloak that covers us and it makes us appear before God as righteous. It's none of our good works. Well, Revelation says that clothing, that bright, luminous clothing that's pure and free of defilement.
Let's say it together. Let's say it together.
Okay, let's say it.
1, 2, 3. Good works.
Good works of the saints.
Yeah.
The good works of the saints
Sorry, I had to do that. I'm sorry.
And it's like, it's insane. It's insane. And so, um, that paradigm shift was probably one of the biggest ones. Obviously, there's difficulties with our Blessed Mother, the sinlessness of Mary. Ironically, I feel like that wasn't as difficult, the sinlessness of Mary, because it's just like it's explicitly attested to by Saint Augustine, explicitly. And once the domino of sola scriptura falls, and I can say, well, there are doctrines, even if I hold to material sufficiency, say, I can just say, yeah, there are doctrines that are extremely implicit in Scripture. I probably wouldn't go to the Annunciation to say, oh, Cacarta Mene, like absolutely 100% full proof proves the sinlessness of Mary. But I can say, look, there's that indication there, at least implicitly. And then the fathers of the church, why would they have randomly, found themselves in a unanimous affirmation of her sinlessness? So anyway, especially someone so venerable and influential as Saint Augustine. So that wasn't as difficult, but that was one, especially for my wife, that it was just kind of like very difficult to comprehend the Marian dogmas, Marian sinlessness, and things like that. But for me, it was merit, kind of getting past my preconceived notion of what justification entails, because that's probably one of the biggest, one of the hardest things to understand when it comes to Catholic theology is, okay, justification is apart from works, according to Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, but we can grow in justification by works, and we can be further justified by works. And so, but when you're a Protestant, James 2:24 isn't in your Bible, so you don't realize that you can increase in justification by your works. So I think those are the main things. I don't know. Is it the same for you?
Coming into the church, stumbling block.
Yeah.
I only had one. I literally only had one, and it was just like hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was in the last class of RCIA. And
oh, really?
Yeah, our instructor was like, we were talking about creation in Genesis 1 and 2, and he basically said, young Earth creationism, we cannot reduce it to a strict understanding of 6-day, 24-hour periods. And I was just like, no, you're drunk. You're just absolutely drunk right now.
Yeah.
Because
right.
Because, growing up Protestant, Lutheran, or whatever, we were taught to read that literally. But not only that, it's just there. It's like there was morning, there was evening, the first day. How do you get around that? Well, then once I read St. Augustine, and I think it's his Confessions, how God didn't create the sun until the fourth day. So how do you get 24-hour, revolutions or whatever those first 3 days? So that helped. But I just remember like my whole reality was just turned upside down when he said that. I'm just like, because I don't know how your Baptist background was with evolution, any form of it, but we were just like so vehemently anti-evolution.
Yeah.
All of it. Theistic, Darwinism, just everything. Just like, no way. There's just no possible way. And so since then, I've kind of grown to learn, like some nuances of different forms of evolution and like how we're not supposed to adhere to Darwinism, but we can, like there's Thomistic evolution and some other stuff. But yeah, that was the hardest part for me. Other than that, it was a breeze. Everything made sense to me. But awesome. that was a grace. That was a huge grace.
Yeah.
But
yeah. No, I can completely relate. And, for me, I guess the reason why that didn't, preface, like growing up, like in our science classes, we were taught that evolution is false. And here are the reasons why evolution is false. And part of it was appealing to the biblical witness, and it's just kind of taught like that's plainly what it says, and then part of it was like, okay, here are the scientific issues, and whatever. And like, to me, that's never really been like this is kind of what I was taught in my upbringing. I've never been compelled to kind of like have a big shift in that, because that's not really what I care about as much. And so coming to the Catholic faith and learning, the magisterium permits you to affirm old earth creationism or theistic evolution or some, combination of all those things, or even young Earth creation. It's not like the magisterium's come out and said young Earth creationism is false,
Right.
But coming to that, it was kind of weird to me because like learning like, oh, what the heck, Trent Horn's a theistic evolutionist, that's weird, he's a really smart Catholic, and but I it never really proved to be a stumbling block for me. And ever since then, I'm just like, if I had to guess, maybe it was young Earth. Does it affect anything for my salvation or my faith?
Right.
Not really, but if I had to guess, it's one of my vestigial Baptist beliefs is, young Earth
Yeah.
creationism. But yes. Oh,
I want to ask you about your YouTube channel. So how did that start? What got you into doing this? And then the other question, like, what is your, I don't know, best moment or biggest, greatest experience that you've had on your YouTube channel?
oh man. So the YouTube channel, what kind of spurred that on for me is one, I have a background in video production and in creating videos for myself. When I was younger, I would make like gaming videos and stuff like that just to have fun. But I kind of got into creating, wedding highlight videos for people doing that. I worked for ORU's athletics department, making highlight videos for them. And so I have a background in videography. And part of it is whenever I was a Baptist, I was wanting to get into like making theology videos. I was
Oh,
wanting to
cool.
shift from, I'm making all these gaming videos with my friends or whatever, to theology videos. And I've made, I think, a few videos. I privated them all, so don't go looking for them because they're all privated. But
Send them to me privately. No, I'm just kidding.
oh no. Hey, I've actually decided eventually I will go back and like react to like my super old videos, whether that be like my gaming or my Protestant YouTube videos or my Protestant sermons
Oh,
that I
you have
preached.
Protestant sermons
Only
that you,
two.
that you
Only
did?
two.
Dude,
Yes.
I got, okay.
Oh
I'll talk to you
gosh.
after this. I'm just so curious.
Yes. No, I do. I preached two messages over the course of time that I was with my Baptist church. And I know for a fact one was about justification. And I don't recall what I said. But that would be something very interesting to look at. And then the other one was over Galatians, I believe. Or maybe I'm thinking of the same one. What's the purpose of the law if we can't keep it or something like that? I don't remember.
Yeah.
What was the purpose of the law during the Old Testament or something like that? So and it was very nerdy. It was like, it was so nerdy. And so, oh gosh, what were we talking about? Oh, what the YouTube channel. So part of the reason why I started the YouTube channel was that I was already wanting to do YouTube when I was a Protestant. It's just like that's constantly what I listen to is just like theology podcasts, debates, things like that. I want to contribute to it. But I also felt the need to kind of share the justifications for why I converted in a public format, just in case people who have a similar background and story to me might be able to benefit from the reasons, but also, for my friends and family who might not understand or who might not be able or have the courage at least to confront me and be like, why do you believe baptism saves? It's just kind of like they can go in a non-confrontational way, look at my video where I make a case for baptismal regeneration. And a lot of it was to also kind of document my journey. And so I created the YouTube channel when I was in RCIA.
Oh.
And so I started, sharing what I was learning. That's why I named the channel The Catechumen. I actually wasn't a catechumen at the time I created the channel. I was a candidate because I had already been baptized in my non-denominational church when I was in high school. And so, but the catechumen in Greek, and I was taking a Greek course, so I honestly just thought it was a cool name. The catechumen I think my camera,
No, it's all right.
There we go.
There you go.
In Greek, the catechumen means the one who is learning. And so that's why I'm never going to change my channel name, is because the focus of the channel is like sharing with you what I'm learning, but also learning together and kind of going through that process together and just growing in our faith. And so that's a lot of it. And as I've kind of reflected on it more and more as time goes on, it's really just like, had it not been, and I'm Gen Z, in my generation, what we consume is just YouTube and TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, but YouTube and TikTok and that sort of freely available online digestible sources of information, because we're not just like going out and spending thousands of dollars on courses and books and things like that, like in stuff like that. It's you have a question, a theological question, and you want to see people who have gone and answered those questions answer it for you and explain to you what you're not getting, right? And so having freely available online Catholic content, because it was such a pivotal thing in my conversion, I wanted to add to the pool and continue to answer questions and to move the conversation forward. Because I found that, at least whenever I started my channel, now it's like everywhere, there were a lot of Protestant YouTubers who weren't being responded to. And so that was part of the reason too, that I wanted to like kind of engage the conversation, move it forward. So yeah, I think those were primarily my motivations for starting the channel.
Nice. And everything's been going well for you as a Catholic and a Catholic YouTuber, correct?
Yeah, nothing's gone wrong at all. Nothing, no ups or downs. No, it's been well. I love the Catholic faith. I love the graces that Christ offers me through the sacraments. I love, sharing online. But it's definitely a journey, and there's definitely been periods where I'm like, should I really be doing this? Should I kind of like take a step back for a little bit, or should I just like let the pros, go at it or whatever? But it has definitely over the last year and a half, maybe, I've just kind of gotten a new perspective of it, because you don't really understand how much of an impact you're making in the now. And so, while you might get good and bad comments about the content that you're making, there are so many people who watch and might even watch through the entire video, who might be impacted tremendously by your content. Yeah. And you will never know. You will have no idea that you are making that impact. And that is the case when your video gets thousands of views, or if your video gets less than 100 views.
That's right. Right.
And making that connection and realizing, okay, oh man, I put so much time and effort into this video and it's not doing as well as these other videos. That's kind of like a thought that I feel like a lot of us are susceptible to. It's like, oh, why did that, one video that I spent no time preparing for do so well? Right. And then this other video I spent tens of hours researching and coming up with a script, and then it's just like bombs. But it's like, the people who do watch it, you have no idea how big of an impact. And Matt Fradd actually said this at the last Catholic Creators Conference, we can't underestimate the possible impact that we can have on one individual. And if it's only one, and if it's only a minute impact, it's still worth it.
Yes.
Because it can have such a big it can produce or contribute to such a big change in a person's life, or in multiple people's life. What if the person who watches your videos, who that doesn't do well in your estimation, becomes the next Saint Robert Bellamy? Like what if the person who is being impacted by your videos goes and tells his family and friends, and he might have only watched one of your videos, but it makes a generational, perpetual. I mean, his kids will be Catholic, his family will be Catholic, his friends will be, and so and this is all speculation on my part, but it's just like, we can't underestimate the kind of impact that we can have. And so we ought to treat every single project that we do, every single topic that we address, and every single person who watches our videos as having that sort of eternal weight and significance that it can potentially have. Because we can't afford to not. We just can't afford to not.
Yeah, it makes it all worthwhile, when you really think about it, how much of a positive impact we can have on someone's eternal destiny. But at the same time, and I think I brought this up in one of my videos, I won't go into it, but and you alluded to this earlier before you actually converted, on how some YouTubers, Catholic or whatever, almost deterred you and deconverted you or whatever. And so yeah, people need to be very careful and be prudent and discern, like what I should and shouldn't be watching. And we both know I know who you're talking about, and it doesn't, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm not into that, but but it's, it's sad because souls are at stake, and every idle word is judged, and everything we do, and it goes out to thousands and thousands of people. And it's, but like what you said and Matt Fradd said, I've always said this whole thing will be worth it if I can save one soul, or help save one soul. You know what I mean? The Holy Spirit does it. But so, I'm on board with what you said. I totally agree.
Man, there's such a good video. I don't know if you saw it. It's actually a clip from a longer video, I believe, but Matt Fradd posted, I think it was like a 3-minute video. It was so clickbaity, but it was like in a good way. It was like, the secret way, or the most, or what is it? Gosh, it's like, what is the best thing that you can do to grow your YouTube channel, or the secret to growing your YouTube channel? Beware, it might cost you your soul. And it was all about, if you want to grow your YouTube channel, you just have to generate outrage and controversy and call people out publicly. And it's like, shoot, because the people who are making the kind of content that scandalized me, who are multiple people contributing to this tribalist, semi-schismatic, almost fully schismatic behavior, what they do is, in their generating outrage, they get people to latch on to their videos like flies. Whether you agree with them or not. If you are wholeheartedly agree with what they're saying, it's like, you're preaching to the choir, and you're getting fired up, and you're getting outraged, and you're sharing it all over the place. And the people who disagree are in the comments. They're like, you're so wrong, and you're misrepresenting, and all this stuff, and you're causing all this stuff. And so it will cost you your soul. And no matter how much it might feel like righteous anger in the beginning, that is stirred up within you by these kinds of content creators, it will eventually turn into something vicious, addictive, and destroying to your soul. Because there can be a fine line many of the times between the righteous anger that we can have and the kind of anger that can send us to confession.
So, and not only that, but righteous anger, but is it prudent to display that righteous anger to thousands and maybe millions of people? So I'm like, prudence is everything to me, especially when we're talking about YouTube content and pushing out stuff and saying this and saying that. So, I mean, you and I know both some of these YouTube, and we're both sinful, and we don't make, all the right decisions or whatever. But I think some of these YouTubers should really examine themselves and be like, do you have the temperament to be having a channel? Because people crave, just, in our concupiscence, they crave sensationalism, gossip, like you were saying, what was it? Rage or whatever, the generated rage or whatever.
Yes.
They crave it. And it like feeds their lack of whatever it is. It's like a national.
And then that's the only thing you can think about.
And
it's constantly occupying your thoughts and making you more and more angry. And it doesn't matter if the person on the screen is saying, I bet you don't pray 15 decades every day like I do, you know? But that doesn't matter because you're going to lose your soul.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It reminds me, quite honestly, quite frankly, it reminds me of the Pharisee who's standing in front of the temple saying, oh, thank you, God, that I'm not like that tax collector. Thank you, God, that I'm so much more righteous than these other people.
Yeah, I honestly believe that every heresy and inordinate ideology is rooted in Pharisaical traditions and tendencies and inclinations. I really do. Like, I just, where people, they make things an end in of themselves. And, you know, obviously they're like exclusionists to other people. Like, we're this Gnostic select few, and, you know, we're the only ones that really know the Pope is, you know, the Antichrist or whatever. And but like you said, you said semi or quasi schismatic. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And really, in a sense, internally in their heart, again, I'm not pointing a finger. I'm not judging. Okay. I don't know what's going on in the heart, but I'm just saying people in their hearts can be formal schismatics. You don't have to like just be excommunicated or, you know, be in one of these schismatic churches.
Yeah.
If you're not like, if you're literally dissenting in your heart, your will, and your conscience from the Pope, you're schismatic. You just, you know, nobody knows about it, because I've discoursed with Catholics and they're like, you know, I'll be like, hey, nice to meet you. And, oh, you're Catholic? Yeah. But I have nothing to do with Pope Francis. I don't abide by anything he says. I'm not obedient to him. I'm not subject to him. I don't care. I hate him, but I'm a pious Catholic. I'm like, dude, no, you're schismatic.
And they don't realize it, but that sort of disposition will land you in the same place that they think that many Protestants are.
Yes.
So if you have that disposition and you're receiving the sacraments, you are not receiving the great, like, you're receiving graceless sacraments. Mm-hmm. And then many of them will say, well, you know, Feniism. Oh, Protestants don't receive grace in the sacrament of baptism, you know? And it's like, though they don't have, you know, they might be materially schismatic, but they're not culpably schismatic, or many of them are not, right? And so it's like that you might, you know, on the surface be kind of like, oh, you know, I'm in communion with this bishop, but you said it 1,000% right. And that has eternal ramifications. It's not just like this cool, like, oh yeah, I'm a part of that group. That's right. You know, and I'm going to, as soon as Pope Francis comes out with literally any document, I'm going to call him a heretic.
Gosh.
And it's like, well, then guess who people have to be in communion with in order to be saved, in order to be a Catholic? Mm-hmm. It's you. And guess what? The constant universal teaching of the Catholic Church is you have to be in communion with the Roman Pontiff. And you're not the Roman Pontiff. So it's like, it's that air. And I think you also said it correctly too, because all throughout the Middle Ages, and it might not be the case for every single heretical schismatic group, but it's just kind of like, I don't know. Maybe I won't say that. Never mind. That's a little bit too edgy.
I was going to say, because you were alluding to like Protestants receiving or not receiving graces, and then Catholics with certain dispositions kind of sacrilegiously going to the sacraments or whatever. And I always say that don't be surprised. I know that sounds kind of patronizing to either side, but don't be surprised if on the last day you see Protestants who, through invincible ignorance, but you'll see Protestants on the last day rise up and condemn Catholics. The Catholics that were culpable and knew better, but dissented and weren't afraid to publicly manifest it and scandalize and lead others, you know, to their perdition or whatever. But you're going to see people in heaven that you're like, what? And then, but I don't know. Oh gosh. And like I was saying before, I made a video on this exact topic. I'll send it to you if you haven't seen it, but it's sad. And the title of the video is how Catholic YouTubers are losing, Protestant YouTubers are winning. And really, it's just how certain, not all, but certain Catholic YouTubers are scandalizing people and leading people, you know, astray or whatever. But then not only that, but then just like the rhetoric that they use and
Yeah.
how offensive and scandalous that is, in contrast with some of these Protestant YouTubers who won't even touch any of that stuff with a 10-foot pole. So I'm not
Yeah.
saying Protestants just inherently by their doctrine or whatever are better or anything like that. And likewise with Catholics, but just the way they're carrying themselves on YouTube, like, take a day off, dude. Like, seriously,
Go
take a
touch
break.
grass. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, you want to play the either or game with me?
Oh, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, just to, you know, we got to get some things in a row and get to know you a little better here. But well,
Oh gosh.
my famous go-to, Saint Augustine or Saint Thomas Aquinas.
Oof. Man, how do you choose between two people who are always right about everything? Let's see. I don't know. I mean, I probably, if I had to say right now in my life, I read more St. Thomas Aquinas than St. Augustine. But because I'm a monkey and I need everything set out like exactly, like systematically and as thoroughly as possible in the most accessible form possible. So I'll say St. Thomas Aquinas, but you know, both of them doctors of the church. Yeah, St. Thomas Aquinas. For
Nice,
sure.
nice. Yeah, I mean, dude, you can't go wrong either way. So
For
that's
sure. For
that's
sure.
where, yeah.
Yeah.
TLM or Novus Ordo?
So I have never been to the Latin Mass ever. I've been to a Latin Novus Ordo,
Mm.
but that was just a papal mass, and so that was really epic. I don't know. I mean, I think I tend to think, and this kind of goes along with some of the priests that I have had the blessing to come to know. A lot of, how do I say this? There are ways that the Novus Ordo could be and frankly ought to be celebrated that is often used as like a demarcation between the TLM and the Novus Ordo, but really shouldn't be. Like Ad Orientem, the use of Latin in the liturgy, and like things like that. Like, so I'll just say, based off of my limited knowledge, I'll just say the Novus Ordo because that's the only thing that I've had the blessing to experience. But you know, maybe you know, I like to think that I know Greek fairly well. So maybe if I went to like a liturgy of Saint John Chrysostom, you know, in communion with the Pope, you know, I might like that more. So I don't know because I don't know, you know, jack squat about Latin. So
Yeah. No. So I was just gonna say. So mine is Saint Augustine, and then mine is the second one is Novus Ordo for me.
okay.
Oklahoma State or OU?
I have to say OU because my dad went there. But I have absolutely, like I said earlier, I don't watch any sports. I don't. I like no basketball, no football, not even the Super Bowl. Like I have absolutely no stake in any sports whatsoever. So, but OU because my favorite color is red too. So I'll just say OU. I'll just say OU.
Nice, nice. All right.
What about you? You have to answer too.
Oh gosh. Uh, uh, I'll go OU because Adrian Peterson went there, and I'm from Minnesota.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, he was in his prime. My goodness, but yeah, whatever. You know who Adrian Peterson is?
I have no gosh darn clue
Oh,
who
okay.
Adrian Peterson is.
Famous running back. It doesn't matter. All right. Besides Mary and Joseph, who's your favorite saint?
Saint Robert Bellarmine.
Wow, that was fun.
1,000%. I love, and a lot of it's just like I am most acquainted with his spiritual works, and theological works, because I've done a lot of work on like the ecumenical councils, infallibility, and things like that. But not all of his works are even translated from the Latin into English. Mediatrix Press is still working on it, and like if you know, if I had to say my main motivation for learning Latin, it would be the writings of
Hmm.
Saint Robert Bellarmine and Saint Thomas Cajetan. And I'm not actually sure if there are other writings that are untranslated from like maybe Saint Francis de Sales, but it's definitely like the controversialist saints that I find have the biggest impact on me, just spiritually and theologically. especially St. Francis de Sales. His devotional works are wonderful. So
Have you read his treatise on the love of God?
I have not.
Oh, dude.
I have to. There's so many books that I'm just like, oh, I need to read this. But I'm in, doggone school right now, and so I can't read the books that I want to read. That's when the semester starts, I'm like, all right, I got to pack it up. I can't read the books that I've been reading. So, yeah.
Okay. Redeem Zoomer or Gavin Ortland?
Oh man. Oh. Well, I haven't played Minecraft with Gavin Ortland. But Gavin Ortland, I was first acquainted with Gavin Ortland because he's the first Protestant who ever decided to make a response video to some of my videos.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like at the very beginning of my channel, I made a debate review that he responded to.
Wow.
And I responded back to him. And then there's another video that I did, and then he kind of stopped responding to me. But I will say Redeem Zoomer is better at he is better at articulating and understanding the arguments that I am making.
Yeah.
I can't say the same with Gavin Ortland. And Gavin Ortland, if you're watching, I love you, but of the videos that I've made and that you've responded to, you have misunderstood me in a way that, you end up misrepresenting me in your video and then claiming that I misrepresent you. And that seems to be a trend from the people that I am friends with, Swan Sona, and other people who've made response videos to you, Gavin Ortland. So I would be on the lookout, and for that reason, I'm going with Redeem Zoomer. I'd be on the lookout for that, Gavin Ortland.
Nice. Let's see here. Favorite food?
Oh, that's tough. So, and it's so tragic. I love pizza. I absolutely love pizza. During our senior trip, there was a 24-hour free stone-fired pizza, place that you could just like keep asking for like personal, pizza slices or whatever. But I have come to the realization that I am sensitive to yeast.
Oh.
And that contributes to a lot of inflammation and things like that. And so and it's like one of the big one. I took a sensitivity test or whatever. But yeast is one of the big ones, and eggs for some reason. I don't know. And it's like these are the things that like I eat so constantly, right? Like I eat eggs every day, or I used to. And so it is pizza, but of the things that I can eat, I don't know. Probably just a burger. I worked at you probably don't. Do you have Freddy's Steakhouse? Yeah. So I worked at Freddy's. I love Freddy's. Just
dude.
Yeah.
Best ice cream in my humble opinion.
True. No, yeah. Freddy's is good.
Yeah, man. So let's see. I'm trying to think of another question. Mac or PC?
PC, 1,000%. I cannot do Mac.
I
can't. I'm trying to like use the mouse, and it's just like, why does it look like that and feel like that? Yeah. But yeah, I will never go Mac ever.
I can't stand Macs. I'm on a Mac right now, and I can't stand it. Like I want to just get rid of it. But let's see. How about this? If you weren't Catholic, what would you be?
Oh, that's so tough. That's so tough. I've never answered this question live publicly before. Or not live, but I've never answered this question publicly before.
Don't scandalize
and I tend
anybody.
To think, what do you say?
Don't scandalize anybody.
Oh, I won't. I'll probably be a Mormon. No, I'm kidding. Definitely not. So here's my rule of thumb. I don't want to be an obviously schismatic offshoot. I don't want to be something where the group has a noticeable, and this is how I'm defining schismatic. There is a noticeable period of time in history where there is a leader or a group of leaders that separates from communion from the church.
Mm-hmm.
So That's my number one. No schismatics. Number two, it has to be Christian because Christianity is the most Christianity has the most robust historical and a philosophical case made for it, as opposed to even other monotheistic religions. So there's that. Two, it has to be Christian. It can't be schismatic. And then three, I value the witness of the early church fathers too much to be a brand of Protestantism. But that also has to do with the schismatic thing, because I definitely think that, if you can trace a movement and a communion to a particular time in history to where they didn't exist prior, that just kind of invalidates them in my mind. So sorry, no Protestantism. So I would probably have to be Eastern Orthodox, but then I'd have to cope with the ecumenical councils, which are inspired of the Spirit according to Orthodox theology, and the people at the councils accepting the papal claims. So Ephesus and Chalcedon, but also the reunion councils, the two reunion councils, when the Patriarch of Constantinople and a few others came and submitted and said, "Yeah, we'll accept the Filioque and the papacy." So okay, well there goes your new Rome. New Rome's in schism, right? And also another difficulty is if Constantinople is supposed to serve as like the new Rome, Constantinople fell and lacked a patriarch for many, many years, and also every single Eastern patriarchal see has succumbed to and contributed to the rise or spread of a heresy throughout all of church history. And Constantinople was the occasion of semi-Arian and pneumatomachien heresies in the 4th century. And so it's like Rome, to me, sorry, I just like ended up making a case for Catholicism, but those are the things that I'd have to cope with.
Yeah.
In the whole Caesaro-papism thing, but I digress. It'd probably have to be Orthodoxy, and if I had to pick a Protestant denomination, I would probably be Anglican, because then I could basically just be a Catholic.
Yeah.
If I wanted to.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, so everybody watching this, please go to Brayden's channel. It's called The Catechumen. I'll have a link in the description. Okay, support his channel, support his family.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything else you wanted to say, Brayden, before we sign off here?
Yes, to all the viewers, if you aren't subscribed to Eric's channel, you have to subscribe right now. You have to hit the bell icon. You have to like this video. You have to comment 40 times. Help the algorithm out. And
Spam.
go become a YouTube member if you have YouTube memberships. I forget.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, Brayden, thanks for coming on. And
it was a blessing.
Yeah, God bless you, and praise be Jesus and Mary.